Hello again. He's the Hall of Famer Mike Sheck. I am Trip Rogers. Together we are the Fantasy Sultans, and we are here week number 4 in the league where they play for pay. Interesting week 3. Of course, interesting if you're a fan of every other team except the New York Giants. Of course, I mean, the New
New
York
York Jets, you
Jets.
could throw that in there.
Listen,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
no. Have
Miami.
you seen the musical memes that they've been throwing, this ESPN person has been throwing online, matching up Earth, Wind, and Fire September with Aaron Glenn's Run Down the Sidelines? I got
With
to
the
tell
Tampa
you, it
two-step.
is
Yeah.
internet gold. It is so funny, and they got it timed so perfectly when he starts doing the dance. I mean, it is so great. And then they pulled another Earth, Wind, and Fire song, and there's been like 4 different versions of this with different songs. But like I said, the Earth, Wind, and Fire stuff is hysterical. And of course, that's the Jets. They're celebrating a win, and then they lose. Kind of like the Giants against the Cowboys celebrating a win, and then they lose. Yeah. 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 We're not talking about our Rat League. We haven't had a win.
No.
We're not
0-3.
celebrating. We have
No.
nothing to celebrate.
Mm-mm. No, literally, we have nothing to celebrate.
Hell, Maria's won a game. And
Yeah.
we killed her at the draft. She still won a game. We haven't. I got a problem with that. Hey, I'm starting with the Fantasy Festivus
Early
airing of the
and
grievances. And we're only in September. Well, true. When this podcast drops, it will be 3 months until Christmas, and 3 months till Festivus. So there you go. Oh, we have too much fun on this show. We really do. Week 3, again, you had some highs, some lows, surprises, injuries. I mean, where do you want to start, Mike?
I want to start with the Indianapolis Colts. They're surprising. They're 3-0. Running back Jonathan Taylor piling up the second highest points behind Trey Tucker with 35 PPR points with his 102-yard, 3-touchdown day on the ground. One huge beneficiary of this Daniel Jones resurgence has been Jonathan Taylor. He leads all backs with 338 yards and 75 fantasy points. Now, Shane Steichen's offense, you'd have to say, was on the hot seat entering the season. I mean, since then, that seat has cooled off big time. And another surprising performance, Caleb Williams in Chicago. 37 points, 4 touchdowns against Dallas. Now, granted, it was against the Cowboys, and I think we can conclude that that defense is terrible, as Charles Barkley would say. But it's still encouraging to see that kind of performance out of Caleb Williams. More big-time stats, Cortland Sutton in Denver, 26 PPR points as Bo Nix bounces back in a big way. Finally, a sighting from Omarion Hampton of the Los Angeles Chargers. He got going with 24 points. And Najee Harris, by the way, that injury opens up the door for Hampton to be that workhorse back. So let's look at him moving forward, rolling on those numbers. Also injuries, CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans, but nothing more significant than James Conner in Arizona. That's a season-ending injury.
Yes.
Another disastrous performance, Michael Penix Jr. 18 of 36, 2 interceptions, 1 going for a pick 6 as Carolina Arthur blanked Atlanta 30-0.
You know, that was probably as bad a performance as you can expect. And
yeah,
living in Georgia here, I mean, Falcon fans were just beside themselves. And now, you know, you answer the question why you kept Kirk Cousins, because if they decide to make a move, they've got Kirk Cousins ready. They got Kirk Cousins ready to go at quarterback. This is a Falcon team, I think, that's under some pressure this year to win. This is a team that is built to win. I don't think this is kind of a buy. This is Raheem Morris's second year. And if they don't show some improvement, and they're in, I mean, Mike, let's be realistic. They're in the weakest division especially in the NFC. The South is terrible. The Tampa Bay Bucks, are not going to strike fear in the hearts of people. Carolina, again, rebuilding. Um, Atlanta, you know, I mean, they're a fantasy nightmare. Bijan
Hmm.
Robinson did nothing this week. Um, Darnell Mooney, you haven't seen anything out of him this year. I mean, and who am I forgetting in the NFC South?
Well, you got New Orleans, which they're
New
forgettable.
Orleans, New Orleans is a lost cause. You know,
Yeah.
New Orleans is a lost cause. So, I mean, that division is not good. And what does it say that Carolina came out? I mean, you had to be surprised that your team, you did pick them to go to the Super Bowl. I got to
Hmm.
feel a lot better after that pick.
Phew,
That
yeah.
was last week than before. But
Right.
I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. Again, they're going to have to play again this season. And I kind of wonder if Carolina will be lulled into a false sense of security and think, oh, yeah, we smoked them last time. We'll smoke them again, you know, because the problem with a young team is you got to remember to put people away. You
Right.
talk about those injuries. I mean, that Najee Harris injury and James Conner's injury, if I'm not mistaken, in real time, they happened almost simultaneously. I mean, literally one right after the other because they were the 4 o'clock games. And I mean, that was bad. But you got to give
Yeah,
credit
gruesome.
on
Yeah.
Grissom too. But you look Trey Benson in Arizona, going to take a huge leave up, and fantasy owners who grabbed him, good move. And also Omari and Hampton. I mean, he was a guy that they had talked about, but Najee Harris was going to split time with him. Well, now it is Omari and Hampton's backfield. I mean, he's the guy there. And I don't even think DeMercado. I mean, I know he's probably going to be the change of pace back in Arizona, but remember last year everybody was kind of on his bandwagon, and he really underperformed last year. And I want to see something before I'm ready to sit there and go, yeah, let's go to Mercado. Anyhow, import exports week number 4. We have them for you, and I will allow the Hall of Famer, Mr. 0-3 in the Rat League. What are you in fantasy, Sultans?
1 and 2.
That's not bad. 1-2. It's not bad. Listen,
Marginal.
hey, I was looking at 1-2 in the Sultans. How I beat my daughter, I'll never
Mm.
know. Never know. And she made the comment to me, had Zay Flowers made that catch at the end of the game, she would have won. And she's right. She's right. I mean, how I hung on, I'll never get. And David Montgomery's performance on Monday night won me the game, my game in the Best Buy League. And I was like, oh, geez, pulled 2 wins out of the jaws of defeat. Unlike the New York Giants, who pull defeat out of the jaws of victory. Anyhow, import exports for week 4.
Yeah, I'm going to start in Las Vegas with Raiders quarterback Geno Smith. Now, I get the feeling that he's kind of like the porridge in Goldilocks's and the Three Bears. You know, 1 week he's hot, 1 week he's cold, the next week he's just right. Well, I don't know about you, but I really want the just right or when he puts up monster performances. I don't want that cold stuff. And I got that in week number 2 because I had to start him as a backup quarterback with Brock Purdy being out. And he just put up a stinker of a game. That was just an awful performance. But I'll tell you what, this is what you're going to get out of Geno. You're going to get roller coaster type performances. But the good thing is he's got the Bears this week, and they're a team that's giving up
Bears.
the most points. The Bears, they're giving up the most points to opposing quarterbacks. So I think no doubt this is going to be a good play for week 4. So I'll import Geno Smith. Moving on, running back Woody Marks in Houston. Now, his performance did not go to infinity and beyond. 5 carries, 27 yards against Jacksonville, but his role is set to increase. He ran more routes than Nick Chubb and turned the Texans' backfield into a 2-man competition. The opportunity is there for Marks to continue into the increasing role, so I think he would be a nice import. Let's look at a wide receiver, Tyquan Thornton of Kansas City. Now, we know the Chiefs' receiving corps has been thinned by surprise. I mean, you've got injuries, you've got suspensions, and that leaves Patrick Mahomes in search of a reliable wide receiver. Well, Thornton stepped up in a big way last week against the Giants. 5 receptions, 71 yards, and a touchdown through 3 games. Thornton leads the team in yards per catch and ranks amongst the most efficient receivers on the roster. So, you've got Travis Kelce, you've got Hollywood Brown. They remain those steady options, but Thornton, he's bringing that spark to the table, and a player who was once risked as a gamble, he's quickly become a trusted target. I'm going to give you another wide receiver, and this time it's a stash in a future move. Carolina's Jalen Coker. Now, he's dealing with a quad injury, and he could make a return in week 5 when Coker, he could be the number 2 receiver in that offense behind Ted McMillan. Bryce Young, Jalen Coker, we've seen it before. They have a great rapport. I think, whether he plays or not, he's still a good pickup because when he does get back into the lineup, he will see action. And I think, like I said, he's going to be that number 2 wide receiver. So he's a future pickup who could pay dividends down the stretch. All right, 2 exports. Running back Dylan Sampson in Cleveland. He saw a sharp decline in volume as he went from 20 touches in week 1 to 7 in week 2, just 1 last week. Why? Because you've got the arrival of Quinshon Judkins, and I think that signals any type of fantasy relevance for him. He's droppable for about 50% of leagues owners who are holding on to the rookie. Export him. All right, another export. Travis Hunter in Jacksonville. Now, that wide receiver at the beginning of the season, everybody was like, oh, this guy's going to play offense. He's going to play defense. He's going to be a secret weapon for Trevor Lawrence. Opposing defenses, you better watch out. Well, week 1, he eclipsed his 64% of the snaps. He's 4th in half PPR points per game and a wide receiver 83. Let's add to the fact that Trevor Lawrence is really struggling with Brian Thomas Jr., Diami Brown, and Parker Washington. Right now, he is not an option for me, and I would send him to waivers. Now, down the line, he could be a pickup, but right now, no.
Well, the problem with Trevor Lawrence is what is he? And I think Jacksonville is and you're right. Trevor Lawrence, he's awful, just awful. And I mean...
And he's one of the quarterbacks I said you could probably get good value of if you picked him up late in a draft.
We were high on him, but I think one of the things that is surprising, we talk about Trevor Lawrence. That was one we mentioned. We mentioned Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott isn't exactly setting the world on fire. And, you mentioned Geno going against Chicago defense. If ever there was a time that I thought the Dallas Cowboys could exploit it, they were playing Chicago. They were playing that defense. The defense is not that good. But then again, Dallas's defense is worse. There you go. I mean, that game, that was a ridiculous game. And, Caleb Williams looked like Mr. All World there. But, yeah, I'll start with my exports. Ramondre Stevenson in New England. Week 2, he had 142 yards, win over the Miami Dolphins. Oh, yeah, life was good for Ramondre Stevenson. And of course, week 5 means he'll spend most of the matchup with Carolina, probably on the bench. Why? Fumbalaya, Fumblerooski. He's got issues with ball security. And this New England offense, I don't necessarily think there's anything great about him. Ramondre Stevenson, though, has shown probably he is ticketed for the bench. I don't think you need to hang on to him. I think he could be an export for you. Chicago Bears tight end Colston Loveland. Now, Mark Andrews, we had said last week, export. Of course, Andrews had a great game, but I think that's a one-hit wonder because Isaiah Likely is going to come back, and I don't know if Andrews is going to do that again. But, Colston Loveland, he's got a bright future, but he is not a big part of the Bears passing game right now. And this was a game that their offense dominated, and he didn't get much. 3 passes, 43 yards. He was targeted 6 times. If you've got him on your roster, no. You can do better in the tight end ranks. All right, let's go with imports this week. First of all, Ollie Gordon of Miami. Listen, he's not the main guy, I mean, that's Devin, a chain, but a chain, but a chain. But Ollie Gordon is the number 2 guy in Miami. And A-Chain has some issues with injuries. So he would be a guy to pick up. And he also got a third of the touches, and he got the only goal line carries for Miami. He's a guy that you could pick up and probably get on your, and even if he's a bench stash, he's a guy that's going to pay dividends, especially down the road if Miami can ever get their offense on track. I mean, the Miami offense was just, the Miami offense, Tua had just an absolutely atrocious game. Tyreek Hill, we've talked about him. You know, he was somebody we were really questioning coming into the season. Jalen Waddle didn't do anything. Hopefully, the extra time to prepare for this week may give Miami a chance to rejuvenate that offense. But I'll tell you, Mike McDaniel is under the gun right now in Miami, and that team needs to right itself. Wide receiver pickup. Denver's Troy Franklin. Okay, yeah, he's coming off a down game, but he was always a wide receiver 4 once, and I think he's a clear number 2 now in Denver. He had over almost 94% routes run, and Cortland Sutton was higher, 100%. So no one topped 59%. So Troy Franklin's a guy, number 2 in Denver, and he'll get his share of points for you in fantasy. And he's a guy you could pick up on the waiver wire, especially if you've had some injuries. Luther Burden of Chicago. Oh, there's that Chicago offense again. He might be, listen, Trey Tucker is the flavor of the week. You know, he had a great fantasy game, so everyone is on his bandwagon. Everybody's trying to pick him up, and probably he has been picked up in your league. But Luther Burden is a guy who you may have better success with. Now, you're going to say, wait a minute, he's on Chicago. You know, they've got Romeo Dunze. They've got DJ Moore. I understand that. But listen, if they go 3 wide receiver set, who's the 3rd wide receiver? Luther Burden. And Luther Burden's a guy you could pick up. And also keep in mind, I think down the road, he could be a big part of this offense, especially if they get the passing offense going. And Ben Johnson's offense probably will go around. I mean, listen, if you look at what happened in Detroit, you saw what he had with his wide receiver core there and tight ends. And so Luther Burden is a guy who is available, and you can pick him up again. Might be a stash. Okay. Defense. You know, there are 2 types of players in fantasy football. One is the one who will draft the defense in the 9th round, the 10th round, the 11th round. And the problem is that defense, most of the time, is not that good. Well, I tend to go with the streaming defense route. And I say this because streaming defenses give you a chance to pick up a defense each week, and chances are they're out there because, listen, if you're in a 12-team league, there are only 12 defenses that are rostered. That means there are 22 or 20 that aren't rostered. So chances are you can get a decent defense. And I've got my eye on one defense particularly, Seattle Seahawks, because they got 2 favorable matchups coming up in the next 2 weeks. They play Arizona this week, and then next week they play Tampa Bay. And I think that would be a good streaming defense if you want to pick one up for you. And those are our import exports for week number 4. Now, we have to go in our segment we lovingly call Rip on Mac Time. Our buddy Mac, who we've had on the show, and we'll have him on probably this season. Our buddy Mac posted on the message board of one of the leagues that we're in together, hey, you got to take your guy out of the lineup. He's going to be inactive. He's doubtful. First and foremost, I mean, I understand sentiment. I get it. But I'm sorry, if you missed the playoffs by 1 game because you told the guy to make a change and you lose to him, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs. And I know you're trying to be nice. Oh, I don't want to get a cheap win. No. There are no such thing as cheap wins in fantasy. You know, and again, a win now is 1 less win you'll have to have if you need to qualify for the playoffs. Do not help your opponents. Okay? especially not on the message board where everybody else can see that too. I mean, yeah, okay. And my second thing to talk about this week is we start buys next week. So you've got to start thinking about if you're going to make a pickup, you've got to look at their bye week schedule. And I say this because one of the issues I have had all year with all of my teams is kickers, because I keep running kickers in and out. And I said, oh, let me get Brandon McManus. And I picked him up in one league. And then I looked, he's on a bye next week. So I'm going to have to either get rid of him after 1 week or pick up another kicker. I don't like to carry two kickers. But then again, you rotate some people in and out, and the kicker could be an expendable spot for the following week. But anyhow, you've got to start looking at that. Green Bay, of course, will have a bye, so you'll have to think about that next week. And the buys are going to be something you're going to need. Again, kind of look ahead just to kind of get an idea of what your lineup is going to be, because if one of your big guns is out, you're going to have to replace them. And if you're talking about a position that you don't carry two of, defense, kicker, tight end, quarterback, maybe, although if you have only one quarterback and you're not carrying a second quarterback and he's got an early bye, you didn't listen to the Sultans. But pay attention to the buys and try and work a week ahead. I mean, that would be the best advice I could give you. Now, listen, you can't account for an injury if an injury happens, but still work a week ahead. I think that will help you in the long run.
You do not want to leave players on your bench. I want to talk about Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in Detroit. They are must starts each week against Baltimore. The duo combined for 4 touchdowns, over 220 yards, and close to 60 fantasy points. Now, obviously, if you drafted Gibbs or Montgomery separate, you're rolling with them. But if you drafted them both together, they got to be in your lineup every week as well, because yours truly left one on the bench and lost the game because of David Montgomery. He was on my bench. He scored, close to 30 fantasy points, and I lost the game because of that. And I mean, I lost the game by 5 or 6, but I would have won the game having David Montgomery in the lineup.
I learned that lesson, not to interrupt, but I learned that lesson last year. I had both in one league, and I just rolled with them the entire season, and I was not disappointed. And again, and I think there was 1 week I think Montgomery didn't play because of injury, but still, Gibbs is a stud. You got to have him in the lineup, and Montgomery, if he's in there. I think Detroit, I think there was a question of whether Detroit would lose something this year without Ben Johnson. Don't think they have.
Look, even if you drafted both of them like I did, put one in the flex. I mean, I don't know any running back or any flex player that's going to give you at least 27 fantasy points. I mean, how many flex players do you know that's going to deliver that much? It really doesn't happen that often. So I think you're just, you need to maximize the amount of points that you have each week, and he's the one player that can give it to you. All right, finally, we talk about buys. Let's talk about schedule matchups. And of course, this week we got the Thursday night game coming up, Seattle, Arizona. On Sunday morning, it'll be the first of the international series in Ireland. You've got the Minnesota Vikings and Pittsburgh Steelers. That game is at 9:30. So either set your lineup Saturday night, but I think you definitely want to check in Sunday morning too before the game, just in case there's a late scratch. But definitely, again, by like 9:15, 9:20, you've got to circle to your fantasy lineup. If you have any players going in that game, that's the time to make those changes, because, hey, player gets scratched, you're leaving points on the table, and that's not good. So, again, you got to watch the schedule changes. And, of course, there's going to be a plethora of those international 9:30 games on Sunday this year.
Yeah, and it's the one. It's funny because I've said this to you. I think one of my dreams is to have an NFL Sunday out in Vegas, because 3-hour time difference. 10 o'clock in the morning for the first game, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 1:30 in the afternoon for second game, and then the Sunday night game starts at 5:30, and then by 8:30 it's over. Well, throw those international games in there, and so your day starts at 6:30 in the morning. Again, if you're a football fan, it's heaven for you. Granted, I think that's where being on the West Coast hurts you to a certain extent.
Hmm.
But I mean, I remember spending many a morning in line at the sports book for March Madness with tip off at 9 o'clock, and the sports book opened at 7:30. So you went in to get your early games in because they were playing at 12, 15. So you want to get those bets in, and I mean, I remember the lines are just, because everybody's trying to put a bet in. It's hysterical, but it's called March Madness for a reason. It is madness. But you're right about those Sunday night morning games, and you got to make sure that you have your lineup set. And listen, if you're not a fan of the Sunday morning games, guess what? And you're right, they're going to be more. The NFL is
Yeah.
going to go more. That is, I think, the next frontier. You are going to see at some point a separate package for those morning games, and it's going to go to somebody, probably a streamer, but that's going to be their entree into the NFL, and they're going to have a number of these games. And it's funny because if the NFL was to expand, I think there's a real likely possibility that you'd have a team in London because you could set up a system where you go home, you play in London for a couple games, and then you have a base over in the United States, and you set up you set up a team spot, and you could then go there because you're only traveling once a week. I mean, the problem is going to be those Thursday games with an international team because essentially it would be really, I mean, it's bad enough now you get maybe one day of practice and then you got to fly. With an international game, you'd have to fly a day before. But again, that's in the future. I don't know about that, but get ready for more international games. We get you ready each week for your fantasy football season. You have any questions, you can always email us, fantasysultans@gmail.com. You can listen to our podcast, Spotify for creators, and also on YouTube. And also, the Fantasy Sultans are on Sunday. Sunday with the Sultans is on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey and foxsportsnewjersey.com. That the time on that, it varies. We usually are on at noon, but it could be earlier. So just keep that in mind if you want to listen to us and get a double header of both the podcast and also our Sunday morning show. We give you the information you need to win your league. I know we're struggling in the one league. We're 0-3. I understand that. Listen, there's some good, there's some bad. We've said that last year. Okay? But we're giving you the information. We're helping you. Don't help your other teams in the league, Mac, on the message board. But we're giving you the information you need. He is the Hall of Famer, Mike Scheck. I am Trip Rogers. Together, we are the Fantasy Sultans.
And you are not.